Hey everybody, it's Christina from Creations with Christina, and we're just putting together a quick card today for Ethan's teacher. The last day of school is next week, and I wanted to make a little kind of care package thing to go to his teacher as a thank you for all the wonderful service and great year that Ethan had. So I'm going to start off first by doing a little die cutting. I'm going to use the Fruit Fusion Apple paper tray ink die, and then I'm also going to use the double end banner die. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my Cuttlebug here, and I'm going to use some craft cardstock. I'm cutting out just the smaller banner, so I'm going to stick that right on here, and then I'm hoping that I can get my apple on here as well. And I think we are just about going to make it. So I'm going to run this through my Cuttlebug. Okay, there is our die pieces. So we have the little apple and our banner. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp my image, and I'm going to be using this apple shape right here along with that stem. So I'm going to go ahead and use some Jenny Bolin cough syrup ink. And I have my apple mounted onto my smallest block that I have because I find it a little easier to stamp with a very small block. So, and I apologize if I go off screen. It's just easier if I'm right over my image to stamp. Okay, so there's my image, or my apple stamped there. So, and I'm just going to clean off my stamp really good because I'm going to be using this again. And I'm actually going to peel it off and stick it to this block right here, a bigger block. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is stamp my little stem. And for this, I'm going to be using another Jenny Bolin ink as soon as I figure out where I set it. There it is. And this one's called Stick Candy. And I'm just going to stamp that right on the top of my apple. Alright, so there is my stamped image. I'm just going to set that one aside. I'm going to clean off my stem, and then I'm going to stamp or stick this to my block, my bigger block. So I have that centered on here. Actually, it's not centered very well, so I'm just going to set this right on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my stem and get that in there as close as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect. So, alright, so I'm just going to set that aside for a second. I'm going to do a little bit more stamping. I'm going to be using Fillable Frames number 1, and I'm just going to stamp this many thanks onto my little banner flag there. And I'm going to do that also in the red ink. So we're going to do many thanks. And I don't know if this will fit on this block. No, to get a different block. Alright. So again, I'm going to stamp that with the red Jenny Bolin ink, and this is the cough syrup. And I'm just going to stamp this right over on the side here. Alright. Let me clean this off. I'll put this away. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my Pure Poppy cardstock. I'm going to cut this down to 4 1/4 because I'm going to be making a 4 1/4 by 8.5 or 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch card. So what I'm doing is just taking my cardstock. This is an 8.5 by 11, and scoring it or cutting it at 4 1/4. And then I have a 4 1/4 by 8.5 piece. So let me just get on my score buddy, and we're going to go ahead and do our score line at 4 1/4. So that created our card base. Okay, so I have my little embossing buddy here, so I'm just going to use this right on the front of my card base, and this just takes out any oils, maybe from my fingers or anything like that, and it'll keep the embossing powder from sticking anywhere except for where I'm going to put the Versamark. So I'm going to go ahead and use Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp my apple onto my card. So this is my ugly stamp pad, sorry. So I'm just going to start right at the very top, and I'm going to make a nice little pattern background using my apple stamp. Okay, so I have that all inked up with my Versamark. I'm now going to I'm just going to grab a piece of scrap paper here and take some clear embossing powder and just put that right over my stamped image. And Versamark stays wet for a little while, so you have some time to stamp and get your embossing powder on. Okay. Okay, so that created our background for our card, and what I'm going to do now is just take one of my stamped images, or my stamped apple that I did on the cutout, and just pop that up with a dimensional. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick that right over the top of one of my embossed apples, and then I'm going to go ahead and take my little many thanks, and that's going to come right off the side here. So I just want to kind of roll this a little bit, so I'm just going to use my closest thing I have here. And then I'll use some pop dots to adhere that down. And then I'll just use my scissors to trim that down. And that's our card for today. Thanks for watching another episode of Creations with Christina. See you next time. Bye!